A huge update to Raceroom just dropped, bringing graphics enhancement updates to the simulator, new racetracks, improvements to old racetracks, and most importantly of all, some brand new, old 1995 DTM cars. Last night we jumped on for a 6-hour live stream to test out the new content, and in this video I'm going to tell you what we thought of it and whether or not Raceroom is worth your time, or whose time Raceroom is worth. Like and subscribe if you have nothing better to do. You should have something better. Why are you watching this? So first of all, the Raceroom developers have done a really great job with this content. Everything feels really nice and solid, really consistent, force feedback's great. It's a very drivable sim. It doesn't have weird floatiness like Automobilista 2, and the cars can actually be balanced and driven on the limit, unlike iRacing. So you get a really nice end drive from the vehicles, and I always found in Raceroom that the 90s DTM cars in particular were some of the best cars. So I was really excited to have these two new 1995 DTM cars. Now, unfortunately, I personally prefer how the existing Mercedes drives in Raceroom out of the 1995 DTM cars. We did drive the two new cars and they do drive perfectly fine, but, and I think this is because of the all-wheel drive, I did find that they tend to be a bit mid to late corner understeery. Even when you adjust downforce, spring rates, diff settings, they're really not my particular style of driving, though it will depend on the speed and what track you're driving. However, you can't really fault them. They're still very fun to drive. They're all very controllable. They make sense as cars. They're absolutely fantastic simulated vehicles. But I found myself gravitating back to the Mercedes as it just turns in more aggressively, oversteers more aggressively. I really like oversteering cars. But yeah, the content sounds great, drives great, absolutely fantastic. You really can't go wrong with it, and you'll really enjoy driving it. And crucially, you'll enjoy driving it against the AI, which I find works really quite well in Raceroom. It's not as good as iRacing AI, but it's much better than Assetto Corsa AI. I would say generally it's better than rFactor 2 AI, depends, you know, rFactor 2 is all over the place. And I would say generally, especially with the 90 DTM cars, it's better than AMS2 AI, though AMS2 AI is all over the place. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it isn't. Raceroom's a lot more consistent with its AI. The AI is a bit slow at the start of races, but once things pan out, it's kind of nice and consistent. They battle each other, they'll do overtakes on you. Nothing really crazy happens, but they're not the most exciting of AI. It's totally drivable, put it that way. Which is a good thing, because unfortunately, when it comes to online driving, Raceroom is a little bit lacking in player numbers. If you're on the European times, peak European times, you will find they have one or two of their ranked servers, and you will get races occasionally on there. But Raceroom, unfortunately, I say unfortunately because it's a really fun game to drive online, unfortunately it's just really not that active online, so you probably will end up driving against the AI if you're getting this content, so keep that in mind. But yeah, the content is absolutely fantastic. Sound, driving, great cars, can't really fault them. Now, of course, there's also the new old tracks. I only really spent a good amount of time driving the old Hockenheim ring, and it's really nice to have that in simulators. There's surprisingly few good versions of that track, so it's nice to have a good version. And they've got the classic and the GP and the short layouts with this. On top of that, you also have Flugehust. I don't know. I can't speak German. I'm sorry, guys. And some like Berlin track, which is kind of like kind of drives a bit like Norse Ring, but with trees around it and corners that these cars really struggle to take. They're tracks that I've never driven before, and as a result, quite interesting to drive in a simulator. It's like with Automobilista 2. There's a whole bunch of Brazilian tracks in that sim, which you'd never normally have come across as a weird British person. But it's fun to experience those tracks in simulators, and certainly adds to the novelty. Of course, if you're Brazilian, you're like, oh, we know these tracks. Or if you're German and you watch 90s DTM a lot, you'll be like, oh yeah, well, of course we know Flughusen and Avus, Berlin, raceway. I think it's in Berlin, because I saw a Berlin Messe building on the track. Yeah, they'll be like, well, of course we know them, but it's fun, I think, driving tracks that you otherwise don't come across. And they all look and drive absolutely fantastic, with really nice track details, really nice road surface details, spectator, grandstands, and stuff that just makes it feel like a real world location. Also, this is where we get onto the graphical aspect of the new update. Before we do that, though, there have been updates to other tracks and improvements. Red Bull Ring, Nordschleife. I was actually on the real Nordschleife last week doing some passenger laps, and it lines up really well. Looks fantastic. The curbing seemed to be sort of the right height in Raceroom, as it is in real life. The curbs are absolutely massive on some of the corners, and I think a lot of the sims, the curbing's a bit too small in various places, and obviously they keep changing the Nordschleife. So really nice that KW Motorsports are working on this and constantly improving things and updating stuff, so you keep getting the latest version of things. As I say, there's also been updates to many of the tracks: Bathurst, Dubai, Knutstorp. I can't even pronounce anything that's not English. Loads of updates. Read through the release notes. I only really tried Nordschleife and the new content, so I can't really talk about them. But onto the graphics changes. So as you can see in the video, they've improved the skyboxes quite a bit, which actually has a really big impact, I find, in immersion. I found this in Assetto Corsa with Pure and their 2D skyboxes. Separate to that, they've also really improved the tone of the game, the sort of the in-game PP filter, the post-processing, or the actual visual rendering. Things like shadows have improved, reflections have improved, and yeah, the general tone and feel of the game is just a lot better. I did notice on my OLED, it did feel like the darks were a bit too dark in the scene. So the darks were a bit crushed, and I think I could get around that by adjusting TV settings, but it definitely seemed, compared to other video games, the darks definitely seemed a lot darker. Though, looking at this back on an LCD screen, and I imagine most people play games on an LCD screen, it actually looks pretty decent. Like the choices they've done are really quite nice. The end result in graphics of Raceroom now are just a lot more punchy. It feels a lot more dynamic in the contrast and the brightness. And maybe you could say before it was a little bit muted. It was a little bit more kind of green previously. Whereas now it's more of a sort of darker blue purple kind of tone. It's now much more in line with how most people would probably colour grade a photograph to look somewhat realistic but still a bit stylistic. That's kind of the feel that I get with the visual style of it, and I think it looks absolutely fantastic. The graphical tweaks and adjustments have really made Raceroom look quite a lot better, and I actually think in many ways the tone of it looks nicer than iRacing in many ways. So, you know, I have to say fair play, really good job on that. Obviously, iRacing is more dynamic. There's more going on. Raceroom doesn't have day, night. It doesn't have rain. So, you know, apples to oranges and all that lark. But if you're driving in normal conditions and you just load up Raceroom and you're like, oh, I want a sunset race with nice clouds, you select the two buttons for that option, jump into an AI race, and you'll have a race where things look nice, drive nice, on nice tracks. And, you know, really, can you go wrong with that? I don't think so. I think that's actually fantastic, and I think more sims should be like that. There's too much bloody fiddling involved with most simulators. So good job on the graphics and the pre-done settings. Top notch. Of the fixes in this update, I think the most notable one is when you're in a multiplayer session, the way it goes from session to session. That seems to be a bit more seamless and works better, which if you did a lot of online racing, especially on the ranked servers previously, you would have quite a few issues with it going from session to session. It just been a bit janky. It seemed like they've optimised that a bit better. Just a small thing, but could actually, if you do a lot online a lot, that could actually be quite a big change. So, great update, great content, but where does that leave us? What you need me to tell you how to think? I know how this works. So, Raceroom. The problem with Raceroom is It's actually fantastic. Netcode's great. Some of the best netcode. Actually, online racing car contact netcode is probably the best of all simulators. The general consistency of it, the general polish, absolutely fantastic. Top notch. The problem with Raceroom is that it's just not that active online. It just really doesn't have the player base. I think your hardcore competitive racers go into iRacing bobsled land, and then your sort of mega tweaker, absolute mental physics obsessed drivers, they go into Assetto Corsa land. And then your sort of lazy VR drivers, they go into Automobilista 2 land. And Raceroom is kind of in this position where it really should be more popular, but it's kind of just meandering. It's like it needs... KW need to actually market it, and KW need to actually put some funds into it and maybe move it to a different graphics engine and relaunch it and all that kind of lark. Maybe have a more streamlined ranked multiplayer. I just don't understand how KW have handled this game. The microtransaction component of it, not that the prices are bad, but yeah, that's the problem with Raceroom, is just the user numbers, really. So in terms of recommending it to you guys, yeah, the cars are fantastic to drive. It's really good fun. The AI is great. I have a really good time with it every time I play it. It's not the best in every category, but it's better than most things in every category. It doesn't excel in any one specific thing, but it doesn't under excel in any one specific thing. I would say, if you're a VR dedicated gamer, you can play this in VR, but it doesn't quite get the performance, and you're much better off with AMS2 and Assetto Corsa, for example. If you're very competitive, as I say, iRacing is that for anyone. iRacing is the only thing that has the crazy online ranking. The one thing that Raceroom absolutely does excel in is the Hot Lap Challenge mode, which for some reason KW don't really make a big thing out of it, but it is the best Hot Lap mode in any of the simulators, where you just go to the track you want, pick the car you want, and then you load into it, and you'll have the timing board at the top, who's in front of you, who's behind you, your ghost from your previous best, and it's so addictive and such a fun way to get up to speed, because each time you can see, the car in front of you is just a few tenths away, I'll have another lap. And you can waste hours on it, and there's so much content in this game that hot lapping part of it works really, really well. So if you're a person that really enjoys compelling hot lapping and getting better, or learning tracks with a range of different cars in something that you can sort of jump into without too much fiddling, Raceroom absolutely nails that. It also, I don't know if it still has it, but it used to have a race line that showed you where you previously hit your brakes with a graphic on the screen. I've turned that off because I like to just brake using other references. But that was also really good years ago when I was learning how to drive a bit better. I mean, I'm still terrible, but it actually has some really good features in there for getting you to be actually faster at driving, combined with its more forgiving handling, controllable slip. It's not unforgiving in a really annoying way like iRacing is, for example. Until you learn how to drive iRacing, that game is like repeatedly slapping yourself in the face with a concrete slab. Raceroom's just not like that. Raceroom just kind of makes sense, like AC does. It just makes sense very early on. So that hot lap mode's great, and then also Raceroom does do a lot of competitions and esports stuff, and there are quite a few opportunities in there where you can actually get really good prizes, so it's worth playing for that kind of stuff as well and looking out for those. You'll see that Raceroom also has its event rigs, so Sim Racing Expo, Gamescom, Nürburgring GP track has a huge Raceroom centre. They do events at those things in person, so it's good for that kind of thing as well. But yeah, it's really hard for me to just say to a lot of you guys, oh yes, just go and get the update, because a lot of you will genuinely be better off just playing Assetto Corsa, or iRacing or whatever. So it's very hard to just say, oh yeah, definitely worth getting. But the update is good value for money, and you can have a lot of fun with it. Actually, before it escapes my mind, one thing that Raceroom does a lot better than AC as well, physics-wise, suspension. I really hope that AC Evo sorts out Kunos suspension. ACC and AC suspension is mental. iRacing, rFactor 2, Raceroom all have pretty good suspension. But yeah, suspension on these DTM cars and everything is great, especially when you're attacking curbs, two-wheeling your cars and things. But yeah, so the thing is, it's great content, great update by KW, fantastic work by the KW guys. I wish KW just funded the studio more or marketed it more, because you have such obvious bloody talent at this studio, and it's like it's going to waste. It's going to waste. Oh dear. Fantastic update. Round of applause for them. You can get Raceroom for free. You can try it out, so you can give it a go and see what you think. And I personally really enjoyed the 1995 DTM cars. I will also be doing more hot lap challenges. It's so addictive. See if you can beat my Brands Hatch second place in the Mercedes. You can't, but see if you can. But yeah, that pretty much summarises KW's big Raceroom update. Until the next one, guys, thank you for watching. Thanks for liking, thanks for subscribing, and most importantly of all, thank you for consuming lots of tea. Take care, and goodbye.